Thanks, and welcome everyone. We've got a lot to cover here today, and I'm excited to be virtually meeting all of you today. Just a little bit before we get started about kind of where I'm coming from and Charette Venture Group. Our firm's mission is to help small architecture firms across the U.S. be better businesses. And as a result, we see the perspective of many small firms, and by small firms, I'm saying firms under about 20 people across the U.S. and rural, urban, different industry sectors, all different focuses, but still at the same time, many of them share the same common business challenges and certainly our business development and marketing challenges. So a little bit about what CVG does is when we work with firms, we kind of morph around them to provide all of the business coaching and infrastructure that they might need, anything that's not architecture itself. So leadership, human resources and talent recruitment, financial management, operational management, ownership transition, and marketing and business development, among many other things. So if you have any of these needs or could use some help or just want a free coaching session, please reach out. We talk to small firm leaders every day. Our firm is 10 experts who have various backgrounds in the management and running of small architecture firms. And with that, I will get started on our agenda for today, because we're really covering a lot. This is kind of a 101 session, so we're going to touch on many things. And this recording will be available to you, and the slide deck will be available to you as well. So if you need to go back to any of these slides, you will have access to that. So today we're going to talk about several different things. We're going to talk about branding, why it matters, how to develop a marketing strategy, creating a marketing action plan from your strategy, how to choose the best marketing tactics, assuming you have limited resources, which I'm assuming most small firm leaders do, and how to structure a productive business development program. So with that, let's start by talking about the difference between marketing and business development, because it's important to differentiate between the two. The purpose of marketing activities is really to draw awareness and attract leads into your sales funnel. So think about it like both a megaphone and a magnet. You're really just projecting to the world what you're about. This is the website, your collateral, social media, email blasts, basically everything you're doing to project out into the marketplace what your firm's about. Now, business development is really about converting leads into clients. So somebody knows who you are, that's great. They know who you are through marketing. But this is nurturing those relationships to eventually turning them from just a contact into a client. So we'll talk about both different aspects of marketing and business development today. Let's start with branding and why it matters to small architecture firms. So what branding is and what it isn't. I like to think of a brand or strong brand as a promise. It is a promise, a communication of what it would be like to work with your firm. And it speaks in your absence. We'll talk a little bit about that. An okay brand that's not very well aligned is kind of a suggestion of what it might be like to work with your firm. And a weak brand is simply just a missed opportunity to communicate this when you're not present. So think about a brand as much more than a logo or a website. It is the whole experience. It is your mission, your messaging. It's how your staff acts on the job site and interacts with others. It's all the graphic design that represents your firm. It's your reputation, your firm culture. These are all layers for your brand. So don't think of a brand as simply a nice logo. It's all of these kind of intangible and tangible factors. And why it's important is because a really strong brand that's very well aligned with strong messaging, great photography, a great firm culture being presented, it speaks in your absence. And as a small architecture firm, you can't be everywhere at once. So having a strong brand is probably like the #1 promotional tool that you can invest in. It increases recognition and memorability. People remember who you are. They can recognize your name. Helps people to potential clients to understand your values. Are you traditional? Are you contemporary? Are you conceptual? What's your firm really about? Again, what the experience is going to be like to work with you. Are you more formal? Are you more casual? Definitely improves talent recruitment. We'll talk about this a little bit today, and I know a lot of people are having recruitment issues. It's a very active time in the marketplace. And ultimately, it helps increase your firm valuation when it's time to turn out the lights and or potentially turn your firm over to the next generation of leadership. Now, what it can't do, even the strongest brand can't remedy a lot of problems that that architecture firms tend to turn to branding for, and that's consistent business development or marketing activities, meaning it can't replace those things. You know, if you're not getting any inquiries, it might not be because you're not branding correctly. It might just be because you're not doing any marketing. So think about that. It can't change unproductive behaviors or operational shortcomings, and it can't mend a struggling partnership. In fact, rebranding often hurts a struggling partnership. So there's a lot we can talk about here, but we have a lot of other things to cover. And I know for those of you who are really interested in branding and considering a brand refresh or wondering if you should do branding work, I encourage you to read this article that my colleagues and I wrote. It's on our website at this link. It's a top 10 lessons learned from branding small architecture firms. And there's a really great video of our graphic designer walking through 3 case studies. And it really talks about, you know, when you should and shouldn't consider a branding exercise. So I refer you to this. Again, we will be sharing this presentation if you don't have a pencil now for the link. Branding and messaging are obviously very closely connected, and therefore your firm's mission, vision, and value proposition is very important to your brand as well. It's kind of the why you do what you do. So obviously you can see how that would touch all the aspects of your brand if your brand is authentic. And if any of you have not done mission, vision, value proposition work, or maybe haven't spent much time on it, this is kind of where you should start. You know, think about what your main goal and intention was when you founded the firm. You know, what do you do? What's unique about it? How do you do it? For whom do you do it? Who are your clients or your ideal clients? What value are you bringing to the table and benefit? And what are the basic beliefs, values, and philosophies that guide anybody who's a member of your firm and attract people to your firm, both as employees and as clients? The value proposition is one of the most important elements of your messaging. It really describes exactly how you are going to bring value to your clients' lives. It explains why you're not competing on price alone. So if you are a firm that consistently is second choice or loses based on fee, this is where you should be spending your effort. If you consistently hear we chose somebody with a lower fee, it means that your value proposition is likely not as articulated clearly enough as it should be. This is why people are willing to pay a little bit extra to work with you. It's because they can see the added value that that your fee will command. And often firms think that this is already clear, like, oh, then just go to my website and I'll see that I do great work. But this really, a well-articulated value proposition really connects the dots for your clients, tells them explicitly why they should hire you, so they don't have to guess. And a lot of firms miss this, especially when they're going into the interview process. Really be able to walk in that room and lead with your value proposition and be really confident about it. Don't make them guess why they should hire you. Make it clear. So a value proposition and kind of the language that you use throughout your marketing collateral should differentiate your firm. I'm hoping that everybody on this call is all of these things on the screen. I'm assuming you probably are, most of them. And that's great. But if everybody else is saying the exact same thing, it's really not differentiating you at all. It's just kind of a wasted opportunity. So think about what really makes you special. And I'm just going to read a few of some very strong value propositions as an example, just because I think it's always helpful to see some good examples of value propositions. And the first one is founded by an Air Force veteran. IDG approaches each project with military precision, listening, strategizing, and executing while faithfully meeting every deadline. What I like about this is they're talking about this is a veteran-owned business. That's one differentiator, but they're not just saying that's the differentiator. They're saying military precision, right? That gives some, that very clearly paints a picture in my mind as a client what I can expect from this team. Here's another one. Rare Schmidt architecture was founded on the belief that at its core, good design requires taking a fundamentally optimistic view of the world. We come to work each day jazzed to find that sweet spot where the interplay of quality and value is balanced and optimized, where work and play are virtually indistinguishable. Now, if you know these guys, this completely sounds like them. They are the most optimistic, energized group. They are really fun to work with. And this really clearly says that. Like, I know that if I have a meeting with these guys, they are going to come to the table 100% ready to have a good time and bring the best possible solution. And then lastly, a very different firm. Our clients appreciate that ThoughtCraft's design approach is both structured and spirited, yielding wildly unique outcomes. The results are specific to time and place, anchored in concept, layered with meaning, and built with precise details that are communicated through a solid, thorough set of drawings. This speaks to them. They're very craft-oriented and very conceptual, and they have a very methodical process. And this language speaks to that process. So again, with a value proposition, you're not memorizing this as a script, but everybody in your firm should be able to articulate some version of this so that it is reinforcing this value at every kind of point of communication. If you're struggling a little bit with this, this is an exercise that I like to use with our clients. It's called the so what exercise. So if you, often this can be used before an interview too. You can have somebody bounce some thoughts against somebody who does the so what exercise. So say you make a statement that to you is very clear. You very clearly understand the value. We provide exceptionally thorough construction documents. You know the value of that. Okay, so I'm a client across the table. So what? What does that mean to me as a client? Great, that's great that you do that. Well, that means that change orders are at a minimum and on our projects, and there's no surprise cost to you. Okay, oh, now I get it. Now I know why that matters to me. Oftentimes firms don't take it one step farther, and that's where they kind of need to think. Here's another one. We're really engaged and support, local community, or we're engaged with the local community and supportive of civic engagement in our firm. So what? What does that mean to me? Well, because we've worked with neighborhood organizations for years, we've learned what approaches are most effective with permitting and public process, right? You might assume that the person on the other side of the table knows the value of what you're saying, but why not just make it explicit, make the implicit explicit? So if you find that you have these types of messages in your collateral, take it a step further and really, explain it in more detail. Developing your marketing strategy. I'm going to go through this kind of a down and dirty process that we use with our clients. You can make the most beautiful, long, flowing document with all types of SWOT analyses and competitive research. And if you have time for that, that is great. I applaud you for that. But as a small firm, you're probably just trying to really just get this done quickly. And I'll take you through a few steps to do this. Goal setting. I always say about 3 to 5 goals for a year that are quantifiable and realistic and specific. What do you want to accomplish, right? Often we hear, well, I just want more work or more revenue or something very vague like that. But think about one large adaptive use project, 2021. Corporate interiors, expanding that by 10% of revenue. Maybe increasing client inquiries from a specific client type. We have a firm that works with with single women doing home renovations, usually empty nesters. So they want to get in front of that audience very specifically. So really specific goals. Think about those target markets, right? Think about who, not just your end user, but who's hiring you, right? Get very specific about age, geography, professional status. And you, as you're doing this with your, if you have several goals, this might be several different buckets or categories of people. Write it all down, make sure that it's very category specific so you can kind of drill into each category. Because if your goals include, say, a combination, like you want to break into multifamily and also increase single custom residential. Okay, you know that these client types are very different from each other. A multifamily client has many very different needs from a custom residential client, et cetera, which is why it's really valuable to kind of segment these things and drill down into each. And then think about the client's needs, right? Think about what keeps them up at night. What are their concerns? How can you appeal to them? How can you make their lives better and easier? What drives their decision-making process? And this is one of my favorites. What does success and failure look like to them? Think about if you work in private development and say you work with a large multifamily housing developer and you're working with a project manager. Success and failure means much different to her than it means to a retired couple building their dream home. You know, think about really putting yourself in the client's shoes. Where do they get their information? What networks and organizations are they part of? Now connect the dots. Think about those needs that you've just identified for your target market, and then think about how your firm uniquely is positioned to help that target market. And again, this goes back to connecting the dots for your clients. I like to think of it as a Venn diagram. You know, that sweet spot right in the middle, that's what you should be talking about. And this is the most fun part. And I really encourage you to bring your entire firm together, a multiple, you know, or however you can bring different generations and different perspectives to the table for this, because it's fun. Maybe do it over a lunch or a happy hour. This is when you brainstorm. This is when you look at all of these different categories of, you know, your target markets and their needs and their concerns, and where they get their information. And then this is when you say, okay, how are we going to reach them? What are we going to do? Is this, you know, social media? Is it, you know, advertising and being placed in publications? Is it going to events? Is it organizations joined? Is it all of the above? Is it something even more creative than this that somebody on your team thinks about? So now you've got all these lists, right? You're just brainstorming tactics. You're whiteboarding this exercise out. I'll talk about turning this into an action plan in a second. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say, with every tactic you choose, you should assign some kind of a metric to track it, because you need to know if it's working. And this can be very varied depending on what tactics you're selecting. But you should track it because you don't want to be putting money into something that isn't working for you. So this is the most important part, right? This is what keeps your document from sitting on the shelf, or your whiteboard from just sitting in the corner. It's the action plan. Think about linking your goals with the tactics, right? So if one of your goals was to be the premier restaurant design firm in Nashville, and you've got these different tactics that your team came up with, you know, press coverage, category on your website, you know, it's presentation. Keep these tactics in a special place, because they're going to convert to your action plan. And excuse me for a second. So I like to look at these action plans as quarterly because I think you can get really ahead of yourself or behind yourself if you plot out your entire year. So I look at 3 months at a time. And this is an example of one I did a while back. This is, again, I'm talking about down and dirty, but this is, okay, we're going to accomplish X, Y, and Z in the first quarter. What are we going to do in January, February, and March? Who's going to do what? Okay, so this is where things get more realistic, right? This is where you start worrying about order of operations. If your goal is to send a bunch of email newsletters out, well, you've got to get your mailing list together first. This is kind of how that breaks down. It usually takes about a half hour, 45 minutes to pull these tactics quarterly from your strategy. It's really important. Break them down. I like to say exactly who's responsible for what and how long it would likely take them, because that's where things get more realistic. You can't overload any one person unless that's their job. So then you can kind of say, okay, we've got 8 hours to spend this month. This is what we're going to be doing. And this is another tool I love using, and I'm happy to share this this template with anybody who would like it. At my emails on the bottom here, I'll just email it to you. I developed this as a one-stop look ahead for the whole year. So you think about the months in columns and the different tasks and marketing and business development tasks as rows. And every time at the top, everything is driven by a milestone. So your milestones could be anything from a new employee starting, project breaking ground, project finishing, firm anniversary, big conference that you're hosting. Any of these milestones have these kind of precipitating marketing activities. In this example, okay, so you've got a new employee starting. That means you're going to want to organize a lunch. You're going to want to get a headshot. You're going to want to write her bio and add her to the website. You might want to announce in the business journal. So you can kind of see how all of these things plug in, right, to different times and different activities. And then what I really like about this is assigning a budget or costs to each of these things. This really helps you look ahead as to budgeting. And again, if you start populating this chart, you'll see, award submissions, you'll see conferences, you'll see different ways that you could put your marketing dollars. You can start to break it out. You can start to see advertising and social media post promotion. So keep in mind, a marketing budget is typically 3 to 8% of revenue. And I know that's a very wild fluctuation for a small firm. But if you are doing branding work or you have a big event coming up, you might be spending more in one year than another. Typically, what we're seeing with firms, around 5 people, is really closer to 2 to 3% of your revenue going towards marketing. Again, drop me a line if you want a copy of this template. I'm happy to share. So how do you choose the tactics that are going to work for you as a small firm? You don't have a machine or an agency working for you. What do you do? What makes the most sense with the ROI? Well, it depends on your strategic goals, obviously. Are your goals, is it brand awareness? Do people need to know you exist? Are you a newer firm, or maybe you just have an awareness issue? Do you want more work in existing market? Do you want to enter a new market, either geographically or a new market sector? Is recruiting your main goal for 2021? So I'm going to kind of go through some different tactics associated with each of these goals. I'll do that quickly. I think I have about 5 or 6, maybe 5. So if your goal is brand awareness, you just want to be on everybody's radar. And often, if you are really busy, say your phone is ringing off the hook and you can't handle anymore, you're not taking any more clients, you really don't want to aggressively market, you want to still make sure that you are on top of mind. So this is where if you are really, really busy, this is probably where you might want to focus. And I've organized these tactics ranging from free, no money expenditure for you, but time, to actual cost. So obviously, brand awareness, PR, press releases. We'll talk about that in a second. Social media, brand strength, messaging, website, making sure that once somebody finds out who you are and they visit your website, that they care enough to do that they're impressed, that it's memorable. Making your brand sing in all appearances. Your mailing list, organize that. Send communications that are of value, not just spam, but interesting and fun and thoughtful communications. Social media advertising to mirror audiences. I'll quickly go into mirror audiences in case you don't know this really great tool. It might sound kind of creepy, but many firms use it. You actually can upload data on your clients, your ideal clients, a list of contact information. And for example, Facebook will take that information and spit back out doppelgangers of your clients. So somebody that doesn't follow you, doesn't know you already, but has the same interests and demographically looks like your ideal client. Really great for custom residential work, for one. And it's actually surprisingly affordable. So it's something to consider if you haven't. Search engine optimization, make sure you appear in search results, and obviously mission aligned sponsorships and any kind of advertising. So these would be the basic tools if you just wanted to stay top of mind, or let people know you exist if they don't already know that. Recruiting is your main goal. You need to make your culture known. Now, this is where social media posts come in handy. I know a lot of people can't see their ROI of social media, but definitely recruits read this. Make sure that any existing employees that you have are connected to your company page, because recruits really like to know who their potential coworkers might be and what their backgrounds are. Make sure you should always be doing this anyway, but for recruiting, it's especially important to highlight the accomplishments of emerging leaders and the younger generation in your firm, and just let potential employees know that you value every member of your firm. Make sure your website is updated, especially your staff profiles, and make sure you're focusing as much on firm culture as your actual portfolio. And this is probably the most important, which is post uplifting job advertisements. And I should include the AIA on here as well. I'm sure you have a job bank. Remember, if your goal is to recruit your competitor's best employee, it might not be that, but hypothetically, if that's the case, you need to make the case for why that person would leave their firm and join your firm. So you are advertising your firm culture. This should be interesting to read. This should be making the case for why yours is the firm that they want to work with. Keep that in mind, as opposed to just listing all of the responsibilities of the job. If your goal is market penetration, say you've just started to get into multifamily or adaptive reuse and you want more of these types of projects, use your thought leadership toolbox, right? Write a few white papers, speak at a conference about the project, write an article, and use it as a lead magnet. When I say lead magnet, if you don't know what that is, that's basically somebody exchanges their contact information with you, and you, in return, supply them with something of value, like an article, a leave behind, a downloadable PDF, a webinar link. Think about that. Social media, again, can be used in almost all of these tactics for the goals that we've been talking about. They just slightly different approaches to it. This is content specific, meaning really talk about your thought leadership. This could be a segmented email list for those of you who have MailChimp or Constant Contact or anything like that. Almost every email tool has the ability to tag right now. So if you don't need to send everything about your latest adaptive reuse project to your entire audience, but if you have an adaptive reuse interest segment, you could certainly get a little bit more communicative with them. Obviously, think about trade magazines, industry blogs. These aren't just design publications. Think about what your clients are reading. Think about these journals that you might not subscribe to, but they do. And always think about the business development component of any of these plans. And in this case, it would probably going to involve a fair amount of new client prospecting. Geographic markets, if you want to widen your radius a little bit. Regional press coverage. We'll talk about PR in a second. Abstracts, meaning proposals to speak at regional events. All of these, as you get these types of engagements, promoting them on social media, asking your staff to share with their networks because they likely have a large geographic range as well. And solid business development plan. You need to physically be there post-COVID, but you need to physically be in these geographic markets to make face-to-face time. And national and regional awards, always a great way to get in front of a new audience. This is one of the trickiest ones, and I think it's the last one that we've got here, but if you want to break into new project industry sectors and get new project types, get asked this question all the time, and it's a combination of things. Think creatively about intersections and commonalities, right? If you do residential work and custom residential and you're trying to get into multifamily, think about how that translates, right? Articulate how that translates, what value your experience brings to this new marketplace and how you have a fresh perspective on something. Leverage existing client connections and referrals. Let people know that you're trying to break into this marketplace. You wouldn't want to use the term break into, but look, say we really are interested in pursuing more projects here. How can you help us? Or what can we do in exchange for you? There might be a lost leader situation, but use your clients and consultants. Let them know that you're interested. Again, strategic teaming is a similar version of the same thing. Make sure that you know this marketplace and research and read and attend conferences and have something to add to the conversation so that people know that you are a potential thought leader in this marketplace and that you've done your research. This is a tricky one, and I get asked about this a lot, leveraging previous experience working for other firms. This is fair game as long as you do it correctly. You can't just download pictures from your previous firm's website. That is a major copyright infringement. You might be able to buy photo rights. If you contact the firm and the photographer, you might be able to use a photo of a project you worked on as a project architect or project manager or principal. You definitely want to consider this, but you want to do it correctly. But this is completely fair. Now, a little bit about PR because I get asked a lot of questions and this is a 101. So I'm just going to talk a couple slides. The main difference between PR and advertising is paid, right? You are paying to play. These are the advertorials that you see. In my opinion, they have just a little bit less gravity because they are a pay to play mechanism. PR is earned media. This is obviously being featured, being called for a quote, having a profile written about you, having somebody write about your project. Hear this all the time, and I've had this experience. What if my firm always gets overlooked, right? Like the project was in the paper, nobody told me, and I wasn't even mentioned. The developer, the client was mentioned. These are some strategies to counteract that. Be proactive, research editorial calendars. If you don't know what these are, almost any more major publication would have. If you go to the advertising section or on their website, they have what's called a media kit, and they often do this in trying to sell ad space, but it tells you what they have planned out for the whole year of content. So if they're doing kitchens in April and you're a kitchen designer, to pitch your kitchens in January to the publication. Say this would be great for your April issue. And again, they're not going to know what you're doing unless you send them a press release. And if you send them a press release, understand how they prefer to be approached. Almost all of them have this somewhere on their website. This is very important. Get ahead of the game and collaborate with your clients on PR. This keeps you having a say in the project publicity, right? And you can phrase this as, hey, how can I help you publicize this project? We want to be part of, getting this project known. Can I provide a quote on the design perspective? Can I provide any working sketches or graphics for you as you're looking to build your PR campaign for this project? Get ahead of it and tell your clients that you're willing to collaborate and contribute. Always watermark your visuals. Make sure you're don't make it giant, but make it readable, legible. And if they ask for a copy without a watermark, that's fine, but they're probably not going to. That's just a great way to ensure that your work gets linked to you. Local beat reporters. If you are likely, you have a business journal in your town, figure out who's on the real estate beat and call them and introduce yourself and ask them what types of projects they're interested in and how can you contribute. Really helpful. And I love using award submissions to get in front of editors. And this is true, especially true for some of these trade publications that you might not necessarily think of. For example, like a Builder magazine, something like that. You know, it's great to get recognition from AIA and design organizations. That's one side of the coin. The other is to get in front of these editors who are writing trade publications. You might not win the award, but if they might remember your work and want to include you in a future publication, and they wouldn't have known you existed if you hadn't done this. So I think it's a good use of time. All right, and this is the last thing we're going to cover today is the basics of business development. And almost every architect that I've ever worked with really hates talking about selling and hates that phrase, hates all of the business development related phrases. They hate selling, they hate pipeline, they hate lead, they especially hate sales funnel. But call a spade, you are selling. You are selling your firm, you're selling your services, you're selling your team's talent, you're selling your perspective on the world. It's not a bad word. Remember, when we're talking about business development, we're talking about lead nurturing and converting leads into clients. So the firms that have the best business development programs have a few things in common. They spend 25% of firm leadership time on marketing and business development every week. I know that sounds like a lot, especially easy if you have a couple of firm principals to divide and conquer a little bit. But yes, you put in the time consistently and you'll see results. They, as part of this, review the business development pipeline at least weekly to talk about, what's out there, what progress has been made, who's doing what proposals need following up on. Use software tools, very important. Even if it's your own Excel spreadsheet, keep track. A CRM is a client relationship management tool. I'm sure many of you have heard this phrase. It's very hot right now. I really recommend HubSpot. That's HUBSPOT. As a CRM, they have a free version. It's very, I think it's very easy to navigate. And it's a great way to keep all of your information in one place. I could have a whole session on CRMs right now, but if anybody has questions, happy to answer them. Make sure you're setting specific dollar goals, so you kind of have these quantifiable goals, and make sure that you're building your marketing plans and budgets around these goals. And remember that marketing and business development are complementary. You need equal time on both, but they should be completely aligned. And your marketing team, your marketing team is probably you, but your marketing efforts should be supporting business development and vice versa. Tracy, is there a question, or I only have a few more slides. Do you want to wait till the end? You're muted. Okay.
Okay, great, thanks. There's one question. What are examples of business development pipelines?
Sure. The pipeline might be prospects and suspects. So you can assign every project that you know about into categories of, maybe, probably, definitely, right? That would be a pipeline. A lot of people have an Excel spreadsheet for this. And then you can assign percentages to that pipeline worksheet and say, okay, well, if this is a maybe, I'll give it a 10% chance of moving forward, and this dollar value. If this is a, I should say that's unlikely, a maybe, I give a 50% chance that we'll get selected for that. Probably you might do a 75% chance. You could tweak those percentages depending on how confident you are. But basically it just says this is how, and then if you assign a dollar figure to that project, you can kind of see how much you have in the pipeline. And a pipeline just kind of shows the projects that are out there that are on your radar and their likelihood of moving forward. Does that help answer the question, I hope? Okay. Well, we can go over more of this at the end. I have a few more. We're just going to talk about the dreaded sales funnel, and then we'll take questions. Okay. We just talked about that. All right. Really quickly, your sales process. I'm not sure how many of you are really familiar with this, with the sales funnel and the different stages. This is a typical sales funnel for an architecture firm. It breaks everything, all of your kind of leads and contacts in your pipeline into like stratas. So you've got incoming leads, which is basically like any, business cards that you get, download from your website, email address, all of the marketing contacts that are coming in. That's the first step in your sales funnel. Marketing qualified lead means somehow you know who this person is, and you know that they're not just they're not your neighbor, which is fine. It's great to communicate, and send email blasts to somebody who might not be a potential client, but you need to know who to focus time on in terms of a serious client list if you're talking about business development efforts. Relationship qualified lead means, okay, not only do you understand this person might be a potential client, but you've actually really spoken to them for some length of time or met them face to face. Then you get to the proposal submitted. The relationship qualified lead actually has a project. You submit a proposal, some firms interview, and then ideally you win. So it's important to know how many people and how many contacts and who is in what stage of this. And that is because you've got your marketing activities attracting interest into your sales funnel. And then you've got your business development activities that are focused on moving these leads forward. So turning an incoming lead into a project one. It's that constant attention. And now when we're talking about defining a sales process, we're talking about what happens at key touch points so that when you sit down to spend your 25% of your time on business development, what do you do? What do you focus on? You think about what's going to turn an incoming lead into a qualified lead. How are you qualifying these people? Maybe it's a short consultation call. Maybe it's a consultation button on your website. How are you going to encourage a qualified lead to actually meet you in person or have a conversation with you? Now that lead has a project, now you're spending time on submitting a proposal and sending thank you. And then you're following up and following up. You are not just dismissing this lead. You are finding ways to send valuable information to them. You're saying, hey, I saw this article, it made me think of you, wondering if you made a decision. You're not pestering them. You're expressing interest and and ideally offering something of value. So you can kind of see how this becomes a process that you're really defining for yourself and for your firm. Another reason why this is important is you need to be aware of where the holes in your pipeline are. You need to be monitoring this all the time. This is the type of thing you do when you have your weekly meeting where you're monitoring your pipeline. You're saying, we have absolutely 0 people in this stage, which means, as you can guess, that next you're going to have no proposals out there. If your proposals get rejected and you've got nobody in the relationship lead, that naturally is who moves into proposals submitted. So that means you're going to have trouble in a little bit. And that's why you need to monitor this and say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to look at everybody who's in my qualified lead, my marketing qualified leads, and figure out how to get a meeting with them. That's where you should be spending your time. Just always looking to balance this funnel out. I know it sounds difficult to monitor, but a CRM software can actually, you can designate what stage in the funnel they are. So you could actually look at this as an overview, and you can really, this information is presented to you quite clearly. You can do the same thing on a spreadsheet if you want, but it's really a great way to organize your efforts. And lastly, be prepared for a long sales process. We all know, especially in custom residential, that this can be from when a firm comes on your radar, or you come on their client's radar. There can be a long time before they actually have a project that's coming to fruition that they're hiring for. Okay, this can be months, this could be years in some instances. This is where marketing activities are really important, right? You need to stay top of mind so that when this client makes a decision and says, okay, let's call an architect, they need to remember that you exist, right? This is where your marketing activities come into play. This is, you know, getting featured in the press. This is what they call, you know, the 7 touches or whatever. This is the emails, event invitations, webinar invites. This is the time that you're really building trust and familiarity and showing your expertise with clients so that they remember you when it's time to pick up the phone. You know, you're not going to pester them. You're not going to call them, you know, every 3 weeks in this phase, but you can send these kind of gentle touches, which are your marketing activities. And with that, happy to take questions. I'm sure there are a few. I might probably.
All right, we do have one. Does anyone else use HubSpot? I can chime in. Our firm uses HubSpot. We've been using it for a couple of years now. It's been a wonderful way to keep us more organized. But I'll let others chime in as well.
I don't know if they chime in, they'll have to type it in. I think we've got our meeting. HubSpot's very user-friendly, and their customer support is great. One thing I love about HubSpot, and Tracy, you probably had this experience too, is you can link it to your email, regardless of what your email client software is, and just hit log and track. So if you're communicating with a potential client, there's very little data entry, right? You just say, track this person and track this email, and that it creates a record automatically. It's really nice. Like, it takes the data entry out almost entirely. Oh, and the other thing that's really great about HubSpot, and I'll mention, is it's got this kind of wonderful voyeuristic aspect to it. You can, if you send people a proposal or you know, collateral proposal documents, you can actually tell when they open the proposal. HubSpot will send you a notification. You can also tell how long they've spent on different pages. So, and that might be for the paid version, but even the paid version isn't that much. But it is a feature in HubSpot, which is very powerful. So if you're one of those firms that says, oh my gosh, I want to follow up, but I'm not even sure, I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks, did they even get the proposal? HubSpot would tell you that they, not only that they received it, when they opened it and how long they spent.
All right, I think that's all we have for questions. I do want to remind everybody that this presentation is being recorded and will be available along with the slide deck. And one last shout out and thank you to our sponsors, Cove Tool and Marvin, New Hampshire Saves, Archimedia, Crown Point Cabinetry, Liberty Utilities, Procon, Pella, and North Branch.
Great.